welcome to We Ask. This is our social media platform for spectacular arts. I'm Ames and I am today sat with the lovely Trudy from ECAF. Hi Trudy, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm okay. Thank you for having
Good.
me.
No problem. We're going to talk about mental health today and what Trudy has set up with her company. So Trudy, take it away. Explain who you are and what made you set up ECAF and what does it actually stand for?
So I'm Trudy. Trudy King. I'm the one of the founders of ECAF. It's actually empowering children and families. And we originally started as an after-school homework club for children, and we ran that over by Caldwell. And I would also do summer workshop. So we got funded for a major summer workshop that we did. We took the children out for a while. But as it progressed, we needed funding. We needed funding to keep it sustainable. And so we decided to digress a little bit into training. First, we started with first aid training, and now we're doing first aid for mental health training, along with other qualification course training, short courses like family relationship, family first aid for mental health, set for success, and parenting. And so from that, we get money to put back into programs around children and families.
Excellent. And this is based in Bedford, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is based in Bedford, but we operate just about anywhere. So if you, let's take for instance, somebody in Yorkshire, in Sheffield, they call a company in Sheffield calls and say, we want to be trained. Then we find a local organization that supports children and families, and we work with giving back the money to them.
Okay, cool. So let's start first by asking what is mental health?
So mental health, if you think about it, if you think about physical health, mental health is the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say physical health, you're thinking of I eat well, I have good blood pressure, I don't have my sugar level isn't too high, I exercise, stuff like that. Nobody has any negative thoughts when you say physical health. And it should be the same with mental health. Mental health is just that, mental health. So it is the psychological, emotional, and social well-being of a person, how well they handle stress, how well they relate to others, how well they make choices. And therefore, every one of us, we all have mental health.
We do, definitely. And when you say that, coming to my next question, who can suffer with mental health illnesses? Because obviously, during COVID now, during this pandemic, we have noticed as a community that mental health is rife within us all. And I think people that haven't or didn't think they suffered with mental health, it's come to the forefront maybe now that we've been in lockdown. So there are many different types of mental health illnesses. So can you give an overview of the most common symptoms?
Okay, so first of all, I want to make a distinction between mental health and mental illness.
Right.
Mental health is the health of your mind.
Mhm.
Mental illness now covers a broad range of illnesses and conditions. And this happens when your emotional, psychological, and social well-being is affected. So
Mhm.
you're no longer able to, when there are changes in that, so you're no longer able to have, clear thoughts and emotions. Your behavior change, your relationship with other people change on a daily basis. You're distressed. You are unable to find that level of resilience you need to survive, and that morphs into lots of mental health conditions, and if left untreated, mental illness. So that's the first thing. So the second thing is um, just about, anyone can suffer from mental ill health, then per se, just about anyone. So for us to think, oh, that won't happen to me, that would be wrong. So anyone can be affected, women, men, and children.
Yeah.
Children can be affected as well. I know we tend to not focus and pay attention on our children, but children are affected by mental health. As early as 5, they can start to show a little bit of sign, and then by 11, it can set in. And the most common condition in children will be anxiety. So everyone, it doesn't matter. I also want to point out that you can have excellent mental health, which you can keep that way, or it can deteriorate over time with triggers. And we're going to look at triggers a little bit later. So for us to say, once your mind is healthy, it is always healthy, I don't want people to assume that as well, because there are triggers out there, COVID-19 being one of them. And so what we tend to do is we tend to check every now and again and I have an exercise that I want to do with you. You don't have to say it out loud. I just want you to think.
Okay.
And also you can be diagnosed with poor or with a mental health condition or mental illness, and you can live a very normal life because you take care of it. You have the right support system, the right clinical help, the right self-help tools, as well as you can be diagnosed with something and you don't take care of it, so it gets even worse. So it's not a blanket that, these people over there, they have mental health, and these people over here, they don't have mental health. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. Depends on the triggers and how we're able to, our support system, lots of factors.
Okay, so in regards to what you said with different, and it's good that you did that, because mental health and mental illness, like you said, are two different things. What can bring on mental illness?
So the first thing is, and then right after that, I'm going to look at, I think there's the common ones that people know. So basically you have, it's a mixture of stuff. So you have psychological issues, you have biological, issues to begin with, which it can be in your genes. So for those people who think, oh, it's just them over there that, that have mental illness, it could be in your genes, and a trigger makes it go off, or you could start exhibiting that really, really early. So factors such as, genetics, a disability, drug use, biological factors. Then you have psychological factors in terms of your coping skills and social skills and how you relate to other people. And then you have social skills, as in the kind of relationships you have, because relationships can be positive and negative. And we do a course called Get Set for Success, where we look at managing challenging relationships, where we know that relationships and things said in some relationships can be very, very negative. And then you look at peers, how you interact with your peers, how you interact with family members. We do a course called Family First Aid for Mental Health, because we look at how each member of the family affects each other's mental health, whether good or bad. And then you have friends. So those are the key factors that can affect, and there are others under these banners that can affect your mental health. And then you have the triggers that go along with it. And the triggers, especially now in COVID-19, COVID-19 is a trigger on its own. Yeah, COVID-19. And I will raise my hand to saying, when I first saw everything happening, I'm like, what is going on here? And you start to think about so many things. One of the worst things was being told, I can't come into work. I could still work, but I couldn't deliver training or do the other things I do in person. I've never seen that in my life. And then they started closing borders. And I'm thinking, I've never seen borders of countries closing in my life. And then you have to start wearing masks. And I think I got really teary one day when I went out and I saw a little child in a mask, and I thought, oh my God, this is real. This is the reality that we're living in, and you're thinking kids shouldn't have to go through that and no school and stuff. So COVID-19 in itself, I have to admit, is its own trigger. But before COVID-19, when we were raising awareness of triggers of mental health, you look at things of like when people have uncertainty, when they have lack of control, trauma. We tend to downplay trauma because we tend to think if it isn't a big accident or a shootout or something like that, that it isn't trauma to the person. So I tend to tell parents shouting in the house, quarreling when kids are around, saying unkind and mean things, trauma, believe it or not.
I know. And
Because the child, go ahead.
sorry, carry on.
So if the child feels unsettled, then the trauma is beginning and not knowing if things are going to be okay. So trauma is quite wide. Then you have social disadvantage, which COVID-19 has highlighted the social inequalities that exist between races and classes. So you have those, you have domestic violence, you have just general fear and anxiety about life. And in COVID-19, the fear of contracting the virus or a loved one contracting the virus and the fear of death of your own self or a loved one. And then you have things like long-term illnesses while facing this crisis. So long-term illnesses on its own, and then long-term illnesses while in the middle of this crisis. And then you have other triggers like caring for someone else. So now you were already the main carer for someone, which can affect your own mental health if you don't have the right help. And then now we're in the middle of a crisis. And then you have things like isolation, which is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Isolation is social distancing, absolute worst. We're designed to interact with people, even the ones of us who, like me, say we're introverts. We do need our moments of connecting with people. And my one of my sisters said to me last night, she said, "Oh, I miss going out to eat. You don't have to wash up the dishes after. You can just sit there and chat." So we are social beings, and it is quite difficult. One of my mom's friend, who is 77, I think, during the entire lockdown, she had family over just the same. She's like, "I don't care. I'm gonna have my family over because if they don't come over, I'm going to die. Because just being here by myself, I'm going to die anyway." They were careful in how they went over to see her, but she said, "I have to see them because I just can't sit here alone." So isolation. And if you think about isolation on its own, you know, that being, you know, separated from people, then we have the loss of income. One day you had a job, the next day you didn't have a job. So hairdressers could open, then they couldn't open. How do you know how you're going to pay your bills? Then you start worrying. You have homelessness, because if you can't pay your bills, you've got poverty. You're now, those who are living from paycheck to paycheck they're now plummeted into poverty. So they can't buy stuff. And we know trauma and poverty. And I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to look at the Oprah clip that I'd sent you, where I discussed with her the fact that trauma and poverty are triggers for mental health. And I was concerned in my culture, lots of trauma and poverty exist, but people wouldn't admit that they are facing a mental health condition as a result. So you have poverty, you have abuse, not only domestic violence, any form of abuse. And we can have abuse in the workplace as well. People don't want to put that name to it. They call it harassment and stuff, but it's abuse. So whether it's at work, home, friends, whatever it is, those things, you've got lack of money or the loss of income, because you can have an income, but you don't have enough money to do what you want, feeling stressed. Drug and alcohol abuse, which some people play down. I'm okay, I'm fine. We saw a lot of alcohol use during lockdown. People were stocking up, people were drinking more. People, funnily enough, were baking more as well. So overeating. And people were buying loads of takeaways. I don't have a problem with takeaways. I don't want to take away companies to think I have a problem with them. And so, you know, people were munching, some people, not everyone. So it's also little triggers. Well, later we have a whole list here of triggers, and others that can affect people's mental health, their spirituality, if they feel safe. So you can be living in an environment that you don't. So if you live in that part of town that a robbery takes place all the time and you don't feel safe, if you are attending school or have a hobby or have something to do, if you have any form of social life, so to not have those things, to not feel safe, to not have a hobby, to not have any kind of spirituality that can help you, those things can also be triggers for mental health.
Yeah, and I agree with all of those that you said. And when you say triggers, a lot of people, I would just want to touch on PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because a lot of people associate that with, say, soldiers coming back from the war. But in fact, as you're saying, triggers actually are part of PTSD. Now, I'm not saying everyone has that, but people don't realize that even just like you said, seeing a fight, for instance, in the street, or you seeing a minor accident, triggers are something that bring you back to that event, and that is classed as part of PTSD. So can you just go into a bit more about that? Because I think a lot of people need to understand that, you know, those triggers are a form of PTSD. But also I'm thinking as well in regards to the George Floyd incident. I heard a lot of people talking about the fact that, you know, we actually saw a murder take place on television within the Black community, within the Afro-Caribbean community, that a majority of them, if not more than that, have felt racism or some sort of discrimination. And the amount of people that came out on social media and said, I actually remember when this happened to me, and it was a lot of men of my age and above coming out with that. And I just thought, wow, you've actually got triggers, and that's actually triggered you to actually go back to what you felt in the past. So with PTSD, can you go into a bit more depth of that so people understand what it's about?
I, for one, never watched the George Floyd video, and I said when my friends were raging about it, I made a stance not to look at it, not because I couldn't relate. I'm Black. I've been discriminated against so many times, but because I did not want to traumatize myself. Because to me it's trauma to just witness that. I didn't want to do that. So PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, is that feeling of being anxious, nervous, or stressed or distressed based on an incident that has happened in the past. So you can have reoccurring flashbacks of the incident. You can try to avoid that altogether. So say, for instance, an accident that you were in took place on this particular street, you try to not walk on that street. You try to disassociate yourself from thoughts and feelings of that, or you overreact to stuff like that. So one of the things George Floyd did was, of course, everyone can relate. First, it was relatable. Everybody could instantly relate to feeling discriminated against. I could be very wrong. I need the experts, the clinical people to talk to me and tell me, but I believe racism is a mental health condition. It should come under somewhere there, because you cannot not like people just for the color of their skin. You don't know anything about the person and the value and the life. And I always tell my students, when people say, oh, I'm no good, I'm a loser, it speaks to the fact that all of you, it would be like that, and that's not true. So I remember having a student and he literally drew me while I'm talking in class. And he drew my natural hair at the front with the little bits, and he drew every detail of my face, even under here. And I said to him, oh, I'm going to so punish you for drawing under here. And I looked at it because it was the exact, like he just sat there and he started drawing me. And I said to him, do you do this often? And he's like, yeah. My sister and I, we draw all the time, but it's nothing. And I went, wow. So I said, have you taken this to like any local art galleries and asked them to show the stuff? No, it's just nothing. We just do it. And I explained to him at that point why we don't say we're losers, because here is a skill that he has that I don't have. I cannot draw. Stick men are my friends. Yeah. And stick ladies are my friends. And so he has this gift and ability that could take him places if he knows how to use it. But maybe there's just one aspect of his life that isn't so right. So he's not an entire loser. Mm-hmm. And so what George Floyd did was George Floyd made people connect with that side of them that they've actually experienced but couldn't vocalize, didn't have a safe space to vocalize it, couldn't put words to it, didn't know other people felt that way as well. And as one of my friends said, didn't even realize that what they had experienced was actually abuse. And so with it being, they're out in the open and so many people talking, other people can go, oh yeah, I experienced that. I experienced that. Though it wasn't my physical neck, you didn't give me the reference to get a job at the next place. You went and told the manager all sorts of things about me. You made the staff think I'm like this. So people could relate. And people obviously could relate to the physical violence because in 2019 and 2018 and 2017, we had just witnessed over and over and over again the killing of unarmed Black men in America and sometimes in the UK. So it was my cup is now full. I'm at home locked in. I can't help but to see this now. And I'm locked in and I'm dealing with my own emotions because I can't even go to my neighbor's house. And so I'm more in touch with my emotions now to be able to identify the fact that, hey, yeah, I've experienced this. This is wrong. This is not the time to say this is wrong. So that's where George Floyd sits with people. And I've said to my friends that I didn't watch the video because, as I said, it's trauma. I now know what trauma is, and I know what would traumatize me. And so it wasn't that I didn't connect. Of course, I've got stopped by the police before, and you wonder why you're being stopped, and then I've been in an accident. The police turns up. He talks to the other person nicely. He comes over to me. I don't know what he assumed. I've got an accent, but I don't know what he assumed. He asked me my name. I told him, and he just stood there looking at me. I presume he was expecting a different kind of accent, so he couldn't tune his ears in to hear me. And he asked me again, and by this time the rude Trudy in me starts coming up. So I went Trudy. And that's when he kind of like realized that something is a bit off here. So we've all experienced that. We've all experienced some kind of I call it microaggression or macroaggression towards us in terms of racism, which shouldn't happen. We're all humans. The O type blood type saves everybody's life. And in every race, every class, every creed, every culture, the O type blood type exists. So just that alone tells us, that we're not that different in terms of being people, being humans. We're not different.
No, we certainly aren't. We bleed the same, and I agree with that 100%. I mean, color of the skin or ethnic backgrounds or religion should not determine the type of person you are. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. So moving on to ECAF,
I just wanted to also add
Yeah.
that with PTSD, it doesn't matter how big or small the incident is.
Yes, exactly.
I just want people to know that, because if you still have flashbacks and feel stressed when you remember the incident, that's PTSD.
Yeah.
That's PTSD. And what we tend to do is we tend to make some incidents bigger than others. We don't want to do that. It's a person's truth, as my sister would like to say. It's how they felt at the time that this was happening. And it's for them to now recognize that I have PTSD and I need to get the right help, because all of these things, with the right help, we can overcome. I
That
also wanted to point out that while PTSD is there, and PTSD will be one of the big things for COVID, in the UK presently, the most common mental health condition is anxiety and depression,
mhm.
or mixed anxiety and depression. And then you have stress, depression, anxiety, and PTSD being, the forerunners to all that is happening. So it's just having people understand that, knowing what it is that they're experiencing and getting the right help.
Well, that's where ECAF comes in, doesn't it? Because you offer a wide range of courses. So could you explain what first aid for mental health is, and how can people access your courses?
So First Aid for Mental Health is a really good course. It teaches individuals how to care for their own mental health, how to spot the signs and symptoms of major mental health conditions, how to give immediate help to someone experiencing a mental health condition. And if we think about it, if somebody collapses in front of us, we know how to give them help to run, put them in the recovery position. We will see that personally, but when somebody's mind is collapsing around us, we don't often see them unless we know what we're looking for. And so when somebody starts to have a mental health crisis, people around them just start looking at each other. What's going on here? And don't often have the necessary tool to give that immediate help. And that's one of the things we stress in the course. This course allows you to give that immediate help. You know what to do, just like regular first aid. So it also helps individuals, teaches them how to start a conversation with a person who is having that mental health experience, how to signpost safely to clinical services, how to encourage the individual to think about self-help strategies, and for workplaces, how to implement a positive mental health workplace culture, basically. So the aims of it are to preserve life where a person could be in danger to themselves or others, to alleviate suffering by providing that immediate comfort and support that I was talking about, to prevent the condition from developing further into more serious problem, and to promote recovery of good mental health by signposting and obtaining professional support and encouraging self-help. So it is important because it acts as a means of early intervention, prevention, treatment, and destigmatization. And when I say early intervention, the course is a low-level course where when I say low level, I mean it's for the ordinary lay person. It doesn't have psychological speech and term, nothing from the DSM-5 that's going to go over anybody's head. Children as young as 14 years old can take it. So when the awareness happens at 14, 15, 16, and you go, oh, this is what anxiety is, this is what stress is, you're actually helping with early intervention. So it deals with early intervention. We want people to be aware so that early intervention can happen, so that prevention can happen. So if you are in a family or you are in a workplace where the culture is negative, we can help change the culture of that to prevent any triggers that could occur for someone's mental health. So that's what we mean by prevention. And then treatment. Some people don't necessarily need to go and see a psychologist. Their self-help strategy might just be enough for them. But in the course, we always say, let them talk to a professional first, and let the professional tell them that, okay, you don't need to come back and say me, do this and this and this. Take lots of holidays, take lots of breaks, something like that, eat right and you'll feel better. So those are the things that we do in terms of why it is important for the course. So, we can't stress enough, if early intervention happens, if intervention happens at a much earlier stage, then the burden, the onus will be on individuals to take care of their mental health, and we will be less reliant on the NHS and other health care services. And then we can leave that for people who are actually in crisis situations. And it also would allow us to signpost properly to professional help. So the money that's out there for mental health can be used to its maximum ability.
Awesome. And how long do the courses run for? Is it a day, 2 days?
So we do a half-day course, a 1-day course, and a 2-day course. All our courses are online now because of Zoom. We took the decision, not because of Zoom, online via Zoom because of the pandemic. We took the decision to do that because we wanted to be safe. We wanted for the people that we're interacting with to be safe. So our half-day course is about 2.5 hours online. Our 1-day course is 5 hours, and our 2-day course is 10 hours. So we do that in blocks. So you come for 2.5 hours, or you come for 5 hours, or you come for 2 days, over 2 days, 5 hours each. We take breaks throughout. So you're not just sat in front of your computer. It's quite interactive. It's no different from the normal training. However, we do a qualification course and a non-qualification course. So in the qualification course, you have to do an exam. You have to do an exam. You have to study for the exam. It's in the form of a professional discussion for 40 to 60 minutes, where you have to be in a room uninterrupted, where you cannot have any of the teaching or learning aids and materials with you. So it's like a proper exam where it is proctored. In terms of it's invigilated by the person who's doing the professional discussion with you. And so the non-qualification course that we offer is for those who want to learn the same content, want to get the course material. We also give CPD credits and continuing medical education credits with it, but they don't want to do the exam. They just want the knowledge. So they can attend as well. So we have those 3 courses.
Sounds amazing. And how do they book onto these courses? We'll put obviously a website up, but is there a phone number, or we'll put all of that information up? That's not a problem.
Yeah, so they can contact us at training@ecafnp.com, training@ecafnp.com. They can call us or WhatsApp us on 07 508 177829. Any of those mediums can get to us to be able to book on their training. If it's the first aid for mental health training they want, or if they want the family first aid for mental health training, or any of our other training that's out there.
Excellent. And how long have you been how long has ECAF been up and running for?
We got organized in about 2014. I've been trained for the last 5 years in first aid for mental health. So we've been looking for 2014. Yeah, we started with first aid first, and then we branched up into first aid for mental health.
And what made you get into the mental health sector?
Personally, I saw an ad about first aid for mental health, and because we were already delivering first aid, I thought, what could that be? And when I got trained as a first aider, I realized the need to be able to have people trained as first aiders, because I just thought, oh my God, if somebody was to collapse beside me, I wouldn't know what to do. Everybody needs to know how to be able to put someone in a recovery position. Everybody needs to know how to do that. So, and I'm not sure if you remember the video of Fabrice Muamba collapsing on the pitch. And I always say to my sister, I said, the fact that they just went straight to his heart saved his life. Everybody needs to know how to do that and not stand around looking saying, and of course, if you don't know, you're going to stand around and look. That's why I'm advocating that people are trained in first aid. And it's no different with first aid for mental health. If everybody knows how to give that immediate help and support, if everybody knows how to spot the signs. And I just want to say here that a first aider for mental health is not a clinician. They can't diagnose, they can't prescribe anything, recommend anything. They're just a first frontline support, like a regular first aider, to give that immediate help and support and to call for the correct help, clinical help, and to hand the person over to them.
Great. I'm definitely going to do this course because I'm an advocate for mental health. I've suffered with it myself. I've even had PTSD throughout my life. So I think it's very important for people to see the signs and to understand the signs, because there is still, as much as we are talking about mental health and as much as it's out there now, there still is a stigma. As in, if you see a broken leg, that that person is suffering. Well, you can't see mental health. So people need to understand that, someone that once was bubbly into everything, and then you realize that, oh, I haven't heard from them for a while. Maybe it's not because they don't want to talk to you. It's the fact that they may be going through something and they just don't know how to connect with you. And so I think the first aid for mental health course is fantastic. So I take my hat off to you guys. I think it's brilliant. I do have a question about the Oprah Winfrey interview. I know that you were in the audience with Oprah, weren't you? And you were able to ask a question. Can you go into that and tell us how exciting it was and how it was to be there and to actually meet Oprah?
We actually booked to go see Trevor Noah because, we watch him all the time.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I could do something. The tickets are free. I'm that kind of person. I do love Manhattan. So I thought we could go down an afternoon and we could just be like those people we see in the audience. And my sisters had gone, my sister and I had booked before, and they'd gone the week before or 2 weeks before to see him when he interviewed Kamala Harris, believe it or not. But I couldn't make it to that one. And they came back and they told me, and I said, "Oh my God! And you didn't talk to Trevor because he does this between the scenes stuff." And my sister said, "No, we didn't want to do that." So I said, even when Kamala said she was Jamaican, and my little sister said actually she made a comment, and that's, if you see that clip, Trevor responded to her talking to her in the audience, but the camera didn't turn on her, the pan on her. So when I got there, I was just going. I didn't know he had any guests for that day. That's the day I was available to go, and I decided to go. And so we were sitting in the audience like everybody else. And when he said, "Oh, and Oprah Winfrey is our guest today," and I'm thinking, oh, no way, are you kidding me? Simply because I didn't go with an intention saying that there's going to be a guest who the guest is going to be. So it was actually nice that it was Oprah. Where I was sitting, I'd have to send you personal pictures because we were allowed to take pictures at the beginning, but not while the recording started. And literally when we got into the queue, we were last in the queue. So I'm thinking, oh, we're gonna be way up in the back. But actually what they did, people who were at the front of the queue, they made go all the way in the back. And so those of us who were last in the queue were actually at the front. But literally I could hang over. The only thing that was separating myself and Trevor and Oprah was that space between us and the cameraman. So we're like, oh, good spot. So when she came out, she started talking about a lot of stuff, but it was the actual day that she announced her mental health docuseries with Prince Harry. And she had gone on one of the major television stations in the morning to announce it, and then come to Trevor Noah in the evening, in the evening to talk about it as well. And as she started talking, I thought, hey, this sounds like a lot of what I do. And so he said, oh, we're going to only ask 2 questions. And I thought to myself, well, 2 questions will have to be me. So I stuck my hand up there for a long time. And then if you see the video, another lady asked a question about her school, because she was talking about her school and her school in South Africa and the girls there. And then she started talking. So then it came over to me because I wouldn't put my hand down. And so I was able to ask her a question, because since it was around mental health and that was what I did, that was what, was pertinent to me at the time, I was able to then ask her a question. And as you can see her response. And I think it was one of those things, like it was, because as I said, the only thing that was separating us was that gap between them where their desk was and the cameraman. But there was a television above us, and every minute, when you look over, you're looking over live, and you're thinking, oh, that's weird, that's live, that's not Oprah, I know. So we kept looking up at the television screen just above us, because that's the Oprah we know, because we're only used to seeing her on Oprah. After we were like, because it was about an hour or something, so we're like, oh, we can't keep looking up at the screen because we're literally right in front of us here. She's right. So we did that. So it was actually really nice. It was actually nice of her response, to see that she's actually an advocate also for mental health and quite passionate about it. Her response wasn't half-hearted and dismissive, but she was really engaged in her response to my question.
That's brilliant. And was she, like you said, I mean, Oprah is massive to everybody all over the world. Um, what was it like to see her in person?
I think it was a starstruck moment, because I don't get to see that many stars. So it was one of those moments like, a starstruck moment kind of thing, where that was it basically. But after about like 5-10 minutes, we all settled down as audience members, and the show went on.
The show must go on, as they say.
Yeah.
Well, Trudy, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. And as I said, we will be partaking in your first aid for mental health. All the details will be going up on our social media platforms for Spectacular Arts. And I know that you've come on board as well with Spectacular Arts. And so we will be working together also, because you want to put discussions together, discussion forums, don't you? And
Right.
we'll be doing that together, and that I'm very much looking forward to that. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon.